So today we're going to continue on our 3-day journey back to the future, and we're going to begin by focusing on some present trends that are propelling tomorrow's solutions. And our session this morning is sponsored by Mayor and Mayor, and we are very glad to have their support today. And we have on our stage, I don't know if you noticed, 5 fantastic speakers that are each going to share with us their unique perspective on a trend or an issue that is pointing the way to the next 30 years. So as you listen to them, hopefully it will inspire something in you. You'll have a great idea, something that you want to take back to your community and see if you can put into place in your hometown. And think about how you can join forces with other people, because we know that as we do things together, we will be more successful. And we're especially focused on how we can build a talent pipeline to help our job seekers and students gain meaningful work, and how our employers can have the workforce they need to be successful. So that's our focus today, to be thinking about that vibrant economy that we want and that we have here in North Carolina. So to kick it off, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Jeff Frederick. He is the manager of Human Resources for Parker Hannifin Corporation. He is also the chair of the Guilford Workforce Board right here in Greensboro. And, if that wasn't enough, the president of the North Carolina Workforce Development Boards Association. So he's going to be sharing with us today our thoughts from the private sector, and especially on the critical need for a robust talent pipeline to meet our employers' needs. So please help me welcome Jeff Frederick.
Good morning. I hope all of you are doing well and digesting your breakfast, your wonderful breakfast that you had this morning. Can I be honest for a second? All right. Well, I'm honest most of the time, but I just want to let you know I was going to be honest for just a second. I'm a little nervous. I've never done one of these TED Talks. You know, I usually have notes and things scribbled on my hand and all that sort of thing, but today I don't have any of that stuff. So I'm a little nervous about that. And our MC came to me and he said, put those down, just speak from the heart, all right? So that's what I'm planning to do. I feel like I know this stuff, and I'm just going to speak from the heart and talk to you a little bit about what I see coming down the pipe from a business perspective. As Catherine mentioned, I wear a lot of hats because I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about economic empowerment, economic development, and all the things that I do go towards that. So I'm going to speak to you from the heart about those things and what I see for the next 30 years. Now, if it doesn't turn out well, I wear glasses. I didn't wear my glasses, so I can't see the scowls and the frowns and people nodding off in the crowd, all right? But at any rate, so let me talk to you for a little bit. In the business community, also in the military community, there's a term that they use called VUCA, right? V-U-C-A. And what that stands for is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? That is the world that we live in today. You can turn on the news, you can read the papers, you can get on social media. Anything that you do, you're going to find VUCA, right? In our personal lives, there's always something that's volatile and dynamic, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And in the business community, we find that everywhere, and that's what we're grappling with every day. From a U.S. and regional perspective, from a global perspective, that is what we're dealing with. And as we think about our business and how we put our businesses together to go forward for the next 30 years, nothing can be more important to us than talent. And how do we develop a steady pipeline of talent to keep our business growing? Because we don't intend for our business to stop growing in the next year or 3 years or 5 years or even 10 years. We hope that in 30 years, our business is still thriving and doing all the things that it needs to do to provide the families that work for us the sustenance they need to take care of their families, to build a robust economy, and to keep things going in this world that we live in. So, how do we do that? How do we build a robust pipeline? It's up in the air most of the time, right? When I'm looking at recruiting reports and how many people we need to bring into the organization, I worry. I worry a lot because we can't find enough people fast enough to satisfy the needs of our business right now. The economy is coming up to speed very quickly, quicker than we expected, and we need people. And as we recruit people, we find all sorts of challenges with that, right? Soft skills is a huge one, right? And when we say soft skills, that means something a little different to everybody, right? But for the most part, it means the old traditional things that your grandparents and your parents used to tell you. If you're going to have a job, you need to get here on time. You need to be here every day. You need to get along with people. All those things, right? They make sense, right? How many people want people in the workforce that can't get along with people, can't get there on time, can't understand how to do their job? Anybody? Show of hands. I hope not. I hope not. So that's what we're grappling with. And it's really hard to find people with some of those basic things from a soft skills perspective. So we're trying to figure out how to develop some of those things. Even in our incumbent workforce, we have challenges with that stuff. But for the folks that are coming in new to our organization, we're trying to work with some of those things too. The other piece outside of the soft skills that we're dealing with is how do we find people with the technical skills that we need? Mathematics, reading, comprehension, writing, right? Those things are very important when you're putting together a filtration system for the space station, right? You don't want someone that can't understand the blueprint, read the directions, and put a filter on something, that's helping us do a lot of the things that we do, right? So it's important that people have some of those skills. And so the work that you all are doing in terms of finding those folks is very important to us. Now, as I'm looking at all of those things and we're trying to find people, and then we get people that have all of those things. They've got the soft skills, they've got the technical skills, all right? We're cooking with gas, right? We're working. Then we give them a drug test. Why are y'all laughing? Is there something I don't know? Or we give them a background check, and then we're presented with some additional challenges. So how do we get beyond all of that stuff, right? Because those are all barriers that we face in terms of trying to build and keep a sustaining workforce. So what do we do about that? What do we do about that? It's very important to us to stop being reactionary, right? One of the deep, robust feelings that I have about where we are right now is we're very reactionary, right? We only look out for the next 1 year or the next 2 years, and we're trying to develop a talent pipeline around 1 to 2 years. And in many instances, the employees that we need, the things that they need to be successful on our jobs, probably takes a little longer than 1 or 2 years to develop. So, what do we do about that? We have to think more middle and long term about what it is that we do to prepare our workers to come into the workforce, right? Which is why things like work-ready communities, sector partnerships, incumbent worker programs, on-the-job training programs are all things that are extremely critical to developing a pipeline that we can sustain our businesses with. But we have to do those things well, right? So it may seem sometimes that, those things aren't working as well as they could. Well, you're probably right. We can always get better at whatever it is we're doing. We should get better at whatever it is we're doing. Because if we stop gaining momentum or progress, then the VUCA world we live in tends to catch up with us, right? So those things are very important in terms of helping us build and sustain a pipeline. Now, What are some of the other concerns that I have around a talent pipeline and building a robust talent pipeline? From a business perspective, now I'm in a little bit different position because I wear a lot of other hats, but from a business perspective, we know that those things are out there. All of these programs that I just mentioned, right? All of these partners that I just mentioned. But there are a couple of other things that tend to present some challenges to the business community. So I need your help in terms of how do we figure out how to scale some of these hurdles, because if we get good at scaling these hurdles, we can become better at sustaining the talent pipeline. One of the things is complexity, right? Complexity. You know, I've been in the workforce system for a long time, and when I first entered the workforce system, I was a deer in the headlights. I'm probably still a little bit deer in the headlights. Do I look deer in the headlights to you? But at any rate, it's very difficult to understand. There are a lot of moving pieces. There are a lot of partners. Everyone's talking about workforce development, right? And so if I look at it from purely a business perspective, what really is workforce development, right? I got Goodwill over here. I've got NCWorks. I've got the Chamber of Commerce, I've got economic development, all of these people, and they're all working towards the same end, which is great, right? Because we want good paying, meaningful jobs in our communities, right? We want people to fill those jobs, and everybody's working towards that same end. But when I look at it from a business lens, where do I start? Who do I go to, right? And I start somewhere. The other challenge that I have is this is what I need from a business perspective. And I'm talking in ROI, I'm talking in how much is it going to cost to bring this person on board, how much is it going to cost my business to train this person, develop this person so that they're ready to go to work, right? I'm talking in those terms. But then as I speak to whatever partner that I'm working with, I'm hearing a lot of administrative and government terms that sounds like another language to me, right? So we're talking both languages. In many instances, we're speaking the very same thing, but we're speaking in different language. And so the first thing that a business person does is if something's not making sense to you, you don't see how it adds value to your business, what do? You walk away, you shut it down. I don't have time for this. I'll do something else, right? And that's not what we want. That will not get us the talent pipeline that we need, right? Now, it's not all on the system. There's work that the business community needs to do as well. We have to engage. We have to engage in a different way than we have before. We can't just throw stones. We can't just complain. We have to get engaged. But we need your help to tell us how to do that, because we don't know how to do that either. Because we're afraid of that system. Because when we sit down in front of you and you're telling us about all the policy and the laws and the administrative pieces that you all have to manage, which I applaud you because it is a lot. And I respect you for that. But from a business perspective, help us engage you to help us, right? That is how we will build a robust pipeline. And all of the programs we have, they're already there. The tools that we need are already there. It's just how do we use them better? All right? So now I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and talk about the workforce system and workforce boards. All right? I just asked you a rhetorical question. How do we better use the tools that we already have? Right? It's the workforce development boards. Right? They are uniquely equipped with what? All of the wraparound service providers that are in the community that will help with developing a robust workforce and talent pipeline. But more importantly, or just as important, I should say, just as important, not more important, just as important is the business community, right? All workforce boards are made up of how much business? 51%, right? Which is a preponderance, right? A majority. The majority of boards are made up of people from the business community, which is why. Why was it designed that way? To make sure that we had the voice of business in developing the strategies that we need to develop our communities economically, to develop our workforce, right, from a skills and competency perspective. So workforce boards are uniquely equipped to do that. They convene all of the interests that are needed around the table, right, to figure out how do we develop folks, right? What do we need to do for this company to bring their organization into the area and create 10 jobs, 50 jobs, 100 jobs, 1,000 jobs? How do we develop strategies so that people will want to come and bring their jobs here? And then how do we develop the people that they need to sustain bringing their interest here, right? And workforce boards do that through convening the right parties, facilitating the discussion, and all of the other things that they do in order to make things happen. But I feel it's the best kept secret in the nation, actually, because workforce boards are a national thing, right? They're not just in your community or in North Carolina. It's a national thing, right? It's based on WIOA, right? So I think it's the best kept secret in most communities, and we're getting better at leveraging them, but we have to do much more, because as the unemployment rate continues to drop, perspectives shift around what's really needed, especially when you have got budget challenges, right? The first thing most legislators will start to think about is the unemployment's dropping, it's probably soon be close to 4%. We don't need to put as money in workforce development as we have been because we're nearing full employment, right? So the thing is, you know, we risk budgets getting cut. So we have to shift but that's the worst thing that could happen, because we have to shift our focus now, because there are still a lot of jobs out there that are unfilled, right? So the unemployment rate is kind of a false indicator in that sense. So we have to develop the rest of the workforce that we have to fill the jobs that we have. And ironically, those probably are the most challenging portions of our workforce to develop, right? So it takes a different approach to focus on that remaining part of the workforce. So, even more important focus for workforce boards. So, I've been given my 2-minute warning. I bet you would never believe I was nervous when I got up here, right? Because I'm gabbing along. But at any rate, let me move things to a close. So, with all of the things that I've already shared with you, it's really important, more than ever, that we use the tools that we have to focus on the challenges that we have. We have to work together to do that. So anyone that knows me knows that I always like to leave the audience with something to think about, right, as I walk away. Hopefully not the horrible words that I just gave to you for 15 minutes. But at any rate, I am one of 11, right? I have a really huge family, very close-knit. Most of us are musicians, right? So I'm going to tell you a really quick story as I part that I think helps bring this all together. And then I think Francis is going to come up and talk to you a little bit about how do we move to solutions around working together to build the partnerships needed to grow a sustaining talent pipeline. So one of 11, all musicians, and one of the things that I thought about as I was preparing to speak is about 10 years ago, my niece, her name's Kenya Tillery. This also ties into the month of October, because my niece Kenya, with me being one of 11, she and I were the same age, right? So when you're coming from a big family, so I'm Uncle Jeff, right? So Uncle Jeff and Kenya worked on a project. We scored a film score to a movie called Anna and the King several years ago, right? And so as we were putting together that score, I didn't have a huge role in it. She just asked me to put together one small movement, right? And I was proud because I wasn't as good as she was, but she asked me, Uncle Jeff, I'd really like to have you help me with this. What do you think? How should this part go? She played it out for me. And so I said, I think you should go like this. And I hummed the movement. and then she scored it out, right? So that was my little part in that film score. But at any rate, as I was thinking about what I was going to say to you today, I thought about when you're putting together a piece of music, right? There are a lot of notes and chords and different pieces, and you have to synchronize it, and you have to time it, and put it all together so that it makes sense, right? So that it sounds like music, right? If you don't do that well, what does it sound like? Noise, right, noise. So how many of us want to listen to noise for 4 to 6 minutes in a movie? Other than the gunshots and all the action and stuff that goes along with it. But this was a drama, so you don't want to hear noise in that instance, right? And so I contrast that with when I look at the system, the workforce system that we have, and when I think about talent and talent development and talent pipelines, there are a lot of notes, there are a lot of parts, right? How do we make it all make sense so that at the end of the day, we don't have noise to the people that we're trying to serve? We don't have noise to the business leaders that we're trying to serve and get them to engage us to build solutions for our communities, right? We don't have noise to our government agencies and legislators and elected officials that are trying to make decisions to serve the greater populace, right? How do we put it all together to do that so that we have the sound of music versus noise? And that's what I'll leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And it's really good to be here with all of you. My name is Francie Gans. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. That's my hometown. And just moved back after being away for 13 years. So it's real good to be back in North Carolina. And my talk is really about how we find more people like Jeff. How we find more people like Jeff and how we activate them. Because as I was listening to what you were sharing, on the one hand, there was real clear that it's not just about his business, it's about the community. And he recognizes the connections between the two, that if the community's doing well, business is likely to be doing well. But he also talked about the need to not just be reactive, but to be proactive, to think long-term, long-range. And despite the fact that we speak different languages and we've got all these acronyms and we live in a world of bureaucracy, he didn't walk away. He was willing to stick it out and learn those two languages. And I will say that I don't know that we can expect all business people to be as fluent in both languages, the languages of the workforce system and business as Jeff. But I really want to talk about what it takes to find a critical mass of business leaders like Jeff and how to use their leadership and influence in a way that shapes our education and training systems and builds stronger economies. So we're talking about the future, right? And I'm thinking a lot about the future, as you can probably tell. And the next 30 years, this is my first, so I don't even know what I'm getting into for the next 30 years. I'm sure many of you can pull me aside afterward and give me some tips of what I'm looking at. But I know you all also think a lot about the future. I know that's your jobs, really. You're thinking about how do we keep pace with the fact that the labor market is changing all the time, continually. How do we ensure that we're preparing people with skills when the skills that are in demand are constantly in flux? And how do we ensure that businesses that drive our economy are stable and growing and creating new and quality jobs, even though we know that the dynamics of the economy are constantly shifting? And that's really what I see everywhere. I work all over the country. So though I live here in North Carolina, I've worked in about a dozen states. In the last year or so, I've been everywhere from Erie, Pennsylvania to Silicon Valley, California, from Houston, Texas to Honolulu, big metro areas, small rural areas. And there's some consistency, there's some common threads in all those communities. And it's really about grappling with two big questions that, again, you heard Jeff mention earlier. How do we grow good jobs in our communities, and how do we connect people to those good jobs? Those are the questions that I see communities grappling with everywhere. And whether you're a workforce development professional or economic development or community college or K-12, those are the questions that I think we're all being tasked to answer with more and more urgency. And I kind of wish I could say that I've got the magic solution of exactly what we need to do to address those questions, but I don't, because frankly it looks really different in every region. But what I do know is that what makes the difference is who is building the solutions to those questions, who's involved, who's mobilized and engaged. I think sometimes we think that if you have the word workforce development in your job description, it means your job is to prepare people for jobs. And if you have economic development in your job description, it means your job is to support the economy and make sure businesses are strong. But, of course, you all know that doesn't work. You can't do this work alone. We can't think in silos about how we approach this big work. And even more importantly, we cannot do this work without business and industry. And I don't just mean input from business and industry. I don't just mean labor market data or surveys or periodic meetings where you don't get quite the turnout you'd hope for, but you appreciate them for their time. I'm talking about full-on commitment and partnership from business people in building the economy that we need for tomorrow, as well as strengthening our education and training system to make sure we're preparing people for those jobs. So I think this is not all new to you. I think we all recognize that business and industry is important, but I think part of the reason why they're so important is because, as you heard Jeff mention, business people don't usually care that much about the difference between WIOA and Perkins or CDBGs or SEDS or whatever the acronym might be for the program that you work in. Business people are pretty good at staying focused on the big strategic questions. Is my business growing, and do I have people to fuel that growth? And in that sense, they can hold us accountable because they force us to stay focused on those big questions and on moving that needle. We all have a piece of the puzzle to ensure that we've got those solutions, but we've got to work together in solving that. And when you can harness that voice and influence of business to serve as a point of accountability to the many different organizations in your regions that have a role to play, that's when real transformation happens. So that's the work that I do in lots of places around the country, is building these partnerships that take business engagement to the next level, but that also align the many workforce development and education and economic development programs around the needs of business. And my session this afternoon, I'll go into a whole lot more detail on the nuts and bolts and what this looks like and how it's different and how you get it off the ground. But I thought for this morning, a better way to talk about what I've seen and really been inspired by across the country is telling you a story about a place where this has really taken root. And this is one community of many. I mentioned I've been working in about a dozen states. There are many dozens of these partnerships active across the country. But I want to tell you about one place that's been at it for a while. This is Kingman, Arizona. Has anybody ever been to Kingman? Kingman and Mojave? Okay, a few. So it's the northwest corner of Arizona. Las Vegas is not too far. It's desert, but it's high elevation, high desert country, ranching country. And it's fairly rural. Kingman is the biggest population center, but it's just about 30,000 people, so it's not a huge area. And there's a pretty small but mighty manufacturing sector in Kingman. And this partnership started in 2011, so before 2011, though there was some activity in manufacturing, they didn't really know each other. The manufacturers never really got together. They did their own thing and hadn't really had an opportunity to come together. But there was also a whole lot going on, as there is probably in every region that you all are from, to try to support the manufacturing sector and prepare people for jobs in that sector. So community college had a bunch of manufacturing programs, was doing a lot around trying to recruit youth and get them excited about careers in manufacturing. Workforce Board, there were several economic development entities in the region. There were industry associations that had a statewide footprint, but they were doing stuff in Kingman. Chambers of Commerce, Goodwill, community-based organizations. You get it, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of good work happening, which is the good news, but a lot of it was happening independently. So a grant would come along every couple of years, and the community college would partner with the workforce board for a program, and then the grant would go away, and then they'd stop working together. And that's typically how things work, right? It's how we're set up, that we're independent entities, and collaboration kind of happens ad hoc. But what they realized is that even though everybody recognized that manufacturing was important and had potential to be much stronger as a way to drive the economy into the future, there was no coordinated strategy to support that sector. And even worse, what they realized is that because there were all these different efforts targeting the same sector and targeting the same businesses, they realized they were all knocking on the same doors. The same usual suspects, the 5 or 6 businesses that everybody knew, and they all call them and they all ask them to sit on their boards and come to their advisory meetings. And there were a few super champs who would participate in a lot of those meetings, but many of them, as Jeff mentioned, would disengage, would walk away, feeling like this is too much, I don't have time for this, my day job is to make things, I don't have time to go to all these meetings. So that was the state of play that, and I think that present trends could have continued, that community could have gone on and continued to do some good work, but they had not figured out how to get organized in such a way that they were able to really get to a deeper level of business engagement and ensure that the various resources of the public partners were deployed in a way that got to that next level of impact. So a group of public partners, and particularly the workforce board director, along with some folks from an economic development organization and the community college, got together and realized we need to be doing more, and we need to be doing more together to support the manufacturing sector. And we need this to be a business-led and business-driven effort. What they meant by that is not just that we need a few business people to come join our meetings. They meant we need to get a group of business people to fully take the reins in defining what this sector needs so that we have something to follow. We have a way of ensuring that our programs are targeted. And so their first step in approaching this new idea was speaking with one business person in particular, a CEO of a manufacturing company by the name of John Hansen. He's the CEO of Laren Manufacturing. And John is one of these people who is a community leader. He's been around for a long time. His company has a great reputation. And he's skeptical in a healthy way of these types of new initiatives. So in that very first meeting, he was real skeptical. He was thinking, what is this flavor of the month? What is this new, latest partnership you're interested in getting me involved in? And asked, how is this different? Which is probably a question you all are asking too, because there's nothing new about the concept of partnerships. But there are 3 things that are different. And here's what the team shared with him that got his interest. First of all, they said that we want industry to lead in a way that moves beyond what we've done in the past. So we don't just mean we want you to come to one meeting. We actually mean that at this first meeting, we as public partners are going to sit at the back of the room and not say a word. We want to give the floor to you and your colleagues in business to define what is needed most for your sector here in Kingman, Mojave. And we've got your back. We're here to support you, but we can only do our jobs effectively if we have a real understanding of what it is you need as an industry sector. So that's the first thing. We're not going to talk at the first meeting. You've got the driver's seat. The second piece is this is not just a conversation about workforce. And here's the thing, is that for a long time we've convened these groups of business people to talk just about training needs, just about talent pipeline needs. But remember, this was in 2011 when this partnership launched. The recovery's just getting going. For a lot of those small manufacturers, they did have workforce issues, but until they dealt with some of the more critical infrastructure issues or shared marketing issues or permitting issues, they didn't really want to think about workforce. So the second differentiator was that this is going to be a broader, more open-ended conversation about what this industry needs and what we need to do collectively to respond. And that gave John greater confidence that you mean it when you say it's industry-led. You're not just asking me to weigh in on your programs and your agenda. You're willing to let us define our own agenda, and it can be bigger and broader than workforce. Because again, you can't separate what a business needs to grow from how you prepare the talent for that business. And third, the third differentiator is we're going to be focused and we're going to be action-oriented. And the way that we're going to do that is that we're not going to leave the meeting with any initiatives if we don't have any champions associated with them. So I know you've all been in meetings, I know I have, where you talk a lot and you come up with this long list of problems, and at the end of the meeting you say, thank you so much for coming, we'll get to work, but who's doing the work and how are we going to get it all done? The distinction is that we need to focus on the priorities that are most important to business, and there's no better way to figure out what's more important to business than by asking them to personally step up to champion those priorities. So that the first meeting will end with the formation of teams of business champions around those priorities. So that was the third piece, that the partnership was going to be focused and actionable in the sense that it was about mobilizing people to not just identify what the problems are, but to actually develop their own solutions. So that was enough to at least get John Hanson to feel like, all right, I'll help with the first meeting, though he was still skeptical, which again, I think is healthy. What he offered to do was to send out the letter of invitation. So it didn't come from the workforce board or the economic development group or the college. It came from a business leader to other business leaders. So it set that precedent that this is a business-driven effort. It's being supported by all these public partners, but it's really about us as business leaders stepping up and stepping forward. He also hosted that first meeting at his manufacturing facility. So again, it wasn't at a particular public partner location to make clear that this is a business-led effort. And at that first meeting, you had all the public partners there, but they were just listening. And the value in that is that they were able to really respond in a more coordinated way. So fast forward, all right, that was 2011. Here's what they've accomplished, and I'll make this quick, but there's a lot. First, they've done a lot around workforce. Apprenticeship, they had experimented a little bit with apprenticeship. One company had been doing it, but they'd never figured out how to get it to scale among other manufacturers in the region. By coming together as a manufacturing partnership, they were able to replicate that apprenticeship at all the manufacturing companies involved in the partnership. They also did a ton of work with their local high schools. High schools had a SHOP program, a CTE program, that they partnered with really closely. And then when the Arizona legislature cut funding for the high school SHOP classes, this partnership got mobilized and contacted their legislators to have that decision reversed because they were able to speak to the value of those programs from a business perspective. But again, it wasn't just workforce. They did a lot of work around coordinating suppliers in the region, so making more known where the local suppliers are that could fuel that manufacturing sector locally. So they created a database of all the suppliers in the region. They also had a fatality at an industrial park at one manufacturing facility. And part of the reason was that the first responders, the ambulance, couldn't get there in time. They brought that issue to this sector partnership and realized we need to train all of our employees to be first responders so that doesn't happen again. That's the kind of thing that just wouldn't have been possible if there wasn't a way for business people to come together and get stuff done practically. So there's more examples I could give of the specifics, but here's the big picture, is that because this sector partnership has formed and has gelled, manufacturers have a better way of not just accessing talent, but building the talent pipeline that they need. In really specific terms, they're able to contribute. They've also, just by virtue of being better connected with one another, seen new businesses, new product lines, new markets, new spin-offs, more business for local suppliers. They've been able to measure the impact on the growth of the sector by coming together. And maybe most importantly, and this is what John speaks about really eloquently, the manufacturing sector for the first time had a voice and felt that they were able to contribute meaningfully. And to me, that's the point here, is that what this partnership was able to do is harness the passions and commitment of a group of business people who care a lot about their sector, but they care a lot about where they live. John Hanson cares a lot about whether his grandkids are going to be able to grow up and stay in Kingman, or if they're going to have to move away. And because he's now connected with 15 of his peers in manufacturing who think that way, and they're getting stuff done together, and they have a group of public partners at their back to support them, there's not a limit to what they can accomplish. So that's what inspires me about the future. That's what makes me hopeful. Having seen it in Kingman and having seen it in a lot of different places and communities across the country, I think there's no limit to what can happen if you get the right people working together in the right ways. So thank you.
You've heard it said, knowledge is power, but that's a lie. Knowledge is not power. We are in an environment now where we have more knowledge readily available to our customers than we ever have before. And if we don't, as customer service providers, we don't step up our game from our role, then we are risking being put on the sidelines as yesterday's antiquated solution. We heard Francine talk about the importance of that synergy amongst the community being driven and led by the businesses. And that's so very important. But from our perspective, we are those service providers that are helping to train, helping to provide the services necessary for our customers. And we are in a very interesting society change that if we don't understand, we risk missing the boat as it leaves. Looking back over the last 30 years, that started for me when I was 10 years old, when I was in 5th grade. And I remember being in 5th grade, we had a computer, a Commodore 64 computer that we would do little bitty things on. I would make a little rocket fly up the screen, and we would print things off on a dot matrix printer, and that was amazing. 2 years after that, we were connected with CompuServe, and I was able to chat with a neighbor across the town I lived in, and we thought we were the greatest thing ever, because we had a computer in our house. Fast forward a few years, I've got 4 kids who are well more advanced than I am on technology. I've got a dad who's 25 years older than me who spends his time learning technology so he doesn't become an antiquated dinosaur. Don't tell him I said that, Mom. We have to understand what we're facing. My name is Patrick Lingle, and I'm with Lingle Vocational Services, and one of the things we do is provide training for you in a lot of different ways. But the future is different than what the past is. There are a number of trends that are affecting us that are going to make an impact on how we do business, how you and how I do business. One of the major trends is the fact that information is so readily available. I remember going to libraries and having to learn the Dewey Decimal System to try to find a book. Don't need that anymore. We can do a little search and get access to almost anything that we need. I remember thinking that those folks who spent so much time in school to learn their craft were brilliant. But now we feel like we could watch a YouTube video for 10 minutes and we could change the plumbing and electricity in our own house the same as they can. Your customers don't need you to help them write a resume. 10,000 videos online will teach them that. Your customers don't need you to help them figure out how to fill out a job application. They can Google that. So what's going to make the difference for you and for me as we look at the next 30 years? We don't even know what trends are going to be developing. I remember my first computer in college. It was a 75 megahertz, 120 kilobyte memory computer. Now we are talking about memory on a little disk this big, a quarter of a square inch, that holds 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 times more information than that big desktop. Our trends are changing so fast that once we catch up with them, we are already behind. One of the trends we're going to be facing in the future is a government who are writing policies and giving out contracts that are going to be having smaller and smaller budgets and looking at how we are achieving the goals they're setting up for us. And one of the key components for us to do our job well is a term we use, and it's called professionalism. You see, the people who look at YouTube to learn these things, they are missing an important factor, and that factor is you. You make the difference, not the knowledge, not the skill, but your heart, your compassion, your empathy, your helping skills. Those are the things that you don't get off of a YouTube video. Those are the things you don't get off of a Google search. But those are the things that will make the biggest difference in your customer's life in the future as we begin to look back to the future. Professionalism is defined as the skill, the good judgment, and the polite behavior expected from someone trained to do the job well. Listen to that again. The skill, good judgment, and polite behavior expected from someone trained to do the job well. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but how many of you feel that you're trained to do your job well? Don't show hands. Or how many of you wish that when you started into your job that you were given more training and explained even better on what you were expected to do for everything from case notes to customer service to how do you figure out LMI? How many of you wish that you could have been trained better? So that's the first step of professionalism. Your training becomes absolutely vital. And training that's based on theories and expectations and technology that's 10, 15, 20, 30 years old is not going to be effective as we approach a generation ahead of us that doesn't even know those things. Because they're so busy riding the wave of new trends that the old stuff is lost. Think about that. Our kids today have access to more information than we could ever imagine, good or bad. Things that when I was in school wasn't even available. Some of these things weren't even invented yet. But this is part of their daily life. My son's 15 years old. He will come to me with some stats from football players for him, soccer players over in Europe, and he'll tell me what Messi did or Ronaldo did or Neymar did, and he'll give me all this information, and the information is seconds old because he's watching what's trending, and he's following these people. While it used to be that for us to get the news, we waited for the 7 o'clock hour, and the newscasters would actually give us information. Now they give us opinions. We talk about professionalism. We've lost it in the media. We've lost it in politics. We've lost it everywhere that matters. Even some of our major companies have lost professionalism. Some of them have thrown it out intentionally because they want to set a culture that spurs creativity and innovation. Some of our schools have lost the idea of professionalism amongst their students. There's no more accountability. There's no more expectation that if someone complains hard enough, you're going to get a trophy or a grade that you don't deserve. But when it comes to what we do, professionalism is that skill, good judgment, and polite behavior expected from someone trained to do the job well. Expectations are important. How many of you know who Jethro Bodine is? Jethro Bodine. Some of the folks are raising their hands. Most of these folks are over 40. Give you a hint, Beverly Hillbillies. Not the movie, the TV show. I'll tell you a story about a man named Jed, a poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed. Then one day he was shooting at some food, and up come the ground come a bubbling brood. All right, that guy. Jethro Bodine was the nephew of Jed Clampett. And when they moved out to Beverly Hills, he had a desire. He had a passion. He had something he wanted to be above all things. Do you know what that was? A brain surgeon. Someone's brilliant over here. He wanted to be a brain surgeon. And do you know why he wanted to be a brain surgeon? It wasn't money. He had all the money he needed. It was chicks. The ladies, he thought, loved the brain surgeon. If Jethro Bodine came in as one of your customers and he told you, I want to be a brain surgeon, how many of you are going to be having a good day? Ain't going to happen. Why? Because there is no way possible that Jethro Bodine was ever going to be a brain surgeon. Now, it is possible maybe if by some miracle, let's say you got him to be an astronaut. It's possible. You pulled the strings, you did miracles that we haven't seen since Jesus walked the face of this earth, and you got him to become an astronaut. Is Jethro happy with you? No. Why? His expectations was that of being a brain surgeon. And no matter how good of a job you did, the expectations was a brain surgeon. You did miracle. You did good work. But you did not meet your customer's expectations. And to him, you're a failure. As we approach the future, one of the things that we got to understand is the expectations of the folks we're working with are so drastically different than what you and I are going to be thinking. In the next 30 years, 80% of you maybe won't be in the workforce anymore. You're going to be replaced by 80% of the people who have tough, hard, maybe non-existent work ethic and soft skills. But the expectation that they're going to have is that very thing. They're going to expect that they'll come into you, and in a 5-minute video, you're going to fix their problems. And the reality is that doesn't happen. But here's what does happen. The skills you get through training, good training, and the experience you have because of the good judgment you experience, that you have, and the customer service helping skills that you get through your training and through your life experiences, when you add those together, you provide a foundation that allows you, whether you're working with the businesses in the community, whether you're working with the customers who come in or looking for a job, when you get those elements together, it gives you an element of professionalism that allows for success in the work you do. You see, we are in a very interesting industry where many of the customers we face are often in their lowest moments. Think about this. When you meet someone for the first time, we generally ask 2 questions. What's your name? And what do you do? Our society ties what we do with who we are. And many of the folks we work with, if you work with the customers themselves, don't have that identity of what do you do. So they're starting behind the curve anyway. But one of the things we get to do, and we have the privilege of doing, is going from head to heart, looking at somebody and helping them to identify and establish who they are, their identity, their purpose, and to get them on a track that breaks society norms, that says, you are what you do. And instead, as we walk with them through that process, as we empathize with them, and as we work with them, we get to lead them into a transformational moment, hopefully, where what they have experienced and what they experience after they work with us has the potential to revolutionize and transform their life. So as we talk about businesses and jobs and labor market, never ever forget that though the definition of professionalism is a skill, good judgment, and polite attitude or polite behavior expected from someone who is well trained for their job, the real definition of professionalism for you and I is the fact that we are able to walk with and help someone transform. I remember one time when I was mowing the grass when my son was little, we came across a butterfly that was trying to get out of its cocoon. And in my eagerness to watch that butterfly burst forth in all of its glory, I helped him a little bit, too much. The butterfly ended up dying because I helped too much. Our process is that balance. Because what we want to see more than anything is the folks that we work with spread their wings and soar. And that's what you and I get to do. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I tell you, it is about the heart. It is about the transformational moments, and it's the power of you all that are in this room today. My name's Beth Brindley, and I'm with Mayor and this morning I'm going to get a little personal with you, if you don't mind. You see, I'm the youngest of 7 girls, Bonnie, Barbara, Betty, Belinda, Beverly, Benita, and Beth. And my dad's name is Bob. No, my mom's name does not begin with a B, but anyway, we were a big family in a big house, and I was the baby. And every night when my dad would go to the dinner table, he would put me on his shoulders, and he'd walk me through the kitchen, and he'd say, "Here comes me and my buddy." And we would go to the picnic table we ate at, and he would sit me right beside him, and he'd make sure that I got some food. Because you just never knew what the free-for-all was going to bring. We'd have a wipeout with milk that would take a whole roll of the picnic table. And at the end of every single dinner, and I don't care if my mother burned the kielbasa and my father fixed a peanut butter and jelly sandwich after dinner, he kissed my mother and said, "Another delicious meal, Juan." And I want to share that story because I think it really sets the stage for what I want to talk to you about today. Over the last 30 years, how many of you have experienced fear and anxiety and worry, right, about the workforce system and what was going to happen? And we thought one thing was going to happen, and another thing did. Well, I think that is anchored in something I've been studying a lot lately called long path. And there's a fellow by the name of Ari Walsh, and he actually has some TED Talks about this. It gets down to the point of thinking not only in short-termism, which is oftentimes how we approach our engagements with business and industry, right? We're thinking about the short-term problem, and we're thinking about how we're going to fix it. And long pathing is really about thinking out past ourselves. The first real main component around long pathing is that it's transgenerational thinking. When we are in our positions, no matter what level of the workforce system that we are in, oftentimes we think about what we can accomplish from our birth to our death, or for the lifespan of where we are in the workforce system or the position that we hold. And today I'm going to challenge you to think about what are the implications of your actions, not only in your lifetime or the next lifetime or the next 30 years of our workforce system. You see, we do have a situation, we experience storms every day in our business, right? We might have a dislocation where we're helping 1,000 people try to figure out what their next chapter in their life is going to be. What's that transformational moment? Or we might be helping a company that is in need of hiring 500 people tomorrow. And sometimes we make sandbag mentality decisions so that we can survive that particular storm. And we can often get praised for it and promoted for it, but sometimes those strategies may not be what's in the long-term best interests of our community, our individual customer, and our business customer. And so when I think about that, it's so important that we sit down when we're sitting down with that person, when we're sitting down with Jethro Bodine, that we are thinking not only about how what we are trying to do is going to change his life, but his family's life, his children's children, and his grandchildren. And how would we possibly solve that situation or address that situation differently, with that being the lens with which we walk through? So for me, every night when my father kissed my mother and said another delicious meal on, no matter how good or how bad it was, and she did burn the kielbasa on a few occasions, he was setting an expectation for us, his daughters, on the type of relationships that we should be looking for with the men in our lives, the friends in our lives, and so forth. And that carries forward not only to me, but to my 14 nieces and nephews, and my 18 great nieces and nephews, and the traditions that I do with them that will carry on and instill with them the type of ethics we talked about yesterday, right, Josh? Those are the types of things when you think transgenerationally. The second component of long path thinking gets into what we call futures thinking, right? So when we're doing our futures thinking, we have a tendency to do it through the dominant lens. And Patrick alluded to the dominant lens in our culture today, and that's technology, right? In fact, when I started preparing this particular outline, I thought I'd be talking to you about geofencing and Sarah, which is an integrated case management tool, and predictive analytics and data analytics. But you know what? We're in a helping business. And though technology is important, and it's an important part of our future as our workforce system evolves, it is not the guiding principles by which we do our business. And it's not the core of the moral evolution we have to work through as a workforce system. We need to make sure we never lose sight of the individual sitting across the table from us and the power of what we have to share with them. or the company that we're sitting across the table with, no matter what the business life cycle moment is, or the partner that we're sitting across the table from. And I know that we can all remember every offense our partners in our community-based organizations have ever had, or a particular person in an organization, but we have to find a way to let that go and to focus on the long-term future thinking about our system. Because it sure, would have been easy, for us to make easy decisions based on our individual program, what's in the best interest. But we're about building a talent supply chain, not only for today, but for tomorrow. And one of the ways I always keep that in my mind is there's the hockey player Wayne Gretzky. Someone asked him what the key to his success was. He said, "I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going." And so when we're doing our work, no matter where in the system we're doing our work, we need to be moving to where the puck is going as opposed to where the puck is. So as I think about that, and we think about the importance of our partnerships, that reminds me, every night my father stepped up to the table and he made sure I had a place at the table. Some of our partners aren't the biggest partners. They don't have the biggest budgets. They have, they can be frustrating to work with at times. But they're integral to the future and where we go as a workforce system. And the final thing in future thinking and long path thinking comes down to what's called Telos Thinking. And so with Telos Thinking, the focus is to what end? That we always keep in front of us, to what end are we doing this work, right? To what end are we doing this work? And so with that, the question really becomes, what is the end for this individual customer? And so, sure, we can help them get the first job based on the skills they currently have, but sometimes we have to find the way to encourage them to go for something that they may not think they're capable of themselves. That we give them the hope and the belief that they can be successful beyond what their current situation is. And that means sometimes we have to put the performance metrics in the back of our mind. I'm a big believer that if you invest appropriately, you get the returns you need. With our business customer, it's about networking them with the other businesses within their industry sector, because though the large businesses can do this work without us, there are small and medium-sized businesses that are the CEO, the COO, the HR director, so we need that infrastructure that sector partnerships lend us to be able to achieve the maximum that we can for all the businesses. Sometimes, it's outstanding to us when we have someone who's hiring 60 or 90 people, but when you put 50 businesses together in a room and each of those companies are hiring one, of the same type of person, that adds up to 60 to 90 people. But they need the support of that sector partnership. And then our communities need us to breathe the tough love sometimes. In Kentucky, where I'm from, we had Eastern Kentucky lost 17,000 jobs in less than 5 years related to coal. It represented 70% of their economic power. And there has been, as in many Appalachian communities, that struggle around what are we? If we're not in coal, what are we? What do we do? Where does our regional identity go? And there finally came a point that there was an organization called SOAR, Shaping Our Appalachian Region. And 2,000 people from eastern Kentucky set out on a path to define their future, to diversify their economy, and to start building a path. And it was a bipartisan path, and it was a future path. And so the point I want to make to you all today is that there's not one future. There are many futures. And what that future looks like rests on what you do and whether or not you bring transgenerational, future thinking, and telos thinking to the work that you did. You see, my dad taught me more at that dinner table about faith, integrity, responsibility, and relationships than I learned anywhere else. And so I want you to know that I believe in you. I know that you can make the decisions for the long path. And as you do, you will be transforming your communities, your businesses, and the very people who walk through the door. So let's go. You guys are my buddies.
Good morning. You know, I want to be able to, before we move on any further, to be able to say, I thank you so much for the passion in the room, for the expertise in the room, but also for the message. And as Beth had shared with us, really, the importance of how we come together, thinking that we use, and how with such an eloquent way, Patrick, you talk about the professionalism that we exude in this room, but that we're also trying to be able to build in as we look at the next 30 years. And we can't do it alone. You and I know this. And so the innovative partnerships that, Francie, you want to be able to not only share, we can learn from other parts of the country, but we're doing here and continue to be able to work here. And sometimes we do that in some of our instructional and our informal, but also in our infrastructure type of ways. And Jeff had spoke so much about the importance, the power of those workforce development councils, and really what got us to here today. So my name is Eric. My last name is Rolls. I have a name that gets mispronounced every once in a while because of the way it's spelled. It's R-O-W-L-E-S. I have some crazy people in my family. They were going to mess with my name a little bit, so I have a uncle who decided to name one of my people in my family. His name is Royce. My name, you can follow where that goes as well, too. Some of you will get that in a little bit moment. You're like, oh, all right, very good. If it was a girl, they're going to name the kid Tootsie. So if you can imagine that, which is at the interview, so what's your name? My name is Tootsie Rolls. Like, really, come on now. But my name is Eric Rolls, and I run this program called Leading to Change. And we are a training agency that, in many ways, are here because of you. Here because of the work that we collectively have put into place here. And I was trying to think about if there is a ribbon between maybe all 3 or 4 or 5 of the things we're hearing today in our kickoff. And I thought 3 words. 3 words that I think that we can leave here with as we continue on with this amazing conference. And the first one is style. Say style. Style. But I think the other one is speed. Say speed. But your third word, and it's an important one to know, because it speaks to who we are, it speaks to what we do, and the innovative way that you and I will continue this work with each other. And that word is swagger. Say swagger. These are the 3 things: style, speed, and swagger. And I want you to think about from the style, maybe the style that you and I have approached this work, and maybe the style that the last 30 years and the next 30 years will approach this work, even just on a generational level. And you spoke to this so eloquently for my colleagues and partners in here. From a silent generation to a boomer generation to an extra generation to a millennial generation and to the next generation that's 15 years old right now, and we're trying to be able to find out where and how you'll find a place. From a silent generation to a boomer generation, from an extra generation to a millennial generation to the next generation that has a couple different namesakes. They all look at work in a different kind of a way. You remember Johnny and Rosie, the silent generation. Johnny and Rosie, for many of us, this might have been parents of ours in the room, might even be for some of our great-grandparents in the room. Johnny and Rosie, probably back in the day, say back in the day. Back in the day, they went to work, and they graduated from high school first. When they graduated from high school, and well, that meant that there wasn't going to be higher ed or any kind of community college. Instead, Johnny went to the mill, Johnny went to the factory, and Rosie stayed. And she stayed home because that's what was going on in the world. And Johnny had a job, and everything was in place here, and it was a good job, and you're going to get a golden what? And you were going to be able to get this, and this is kind of how we decided to be able to approach work. Find a job, hold the job, and then a world war breaks out. And Uncle Sam wants, and so Johnny goes to war, and that meant Rosie went to, and for many of us in this room, the first women in our families who finally were paid for the work that they do come from a generation. You and I stand on the shoulders of some giants. Am I right? Say true. This room looked a whole lot different back in the day. But she transformed the workforce. She was the original Si Se Puede. She was the original Yes We Can. She was that Rosie the Riveter. And she changed how we look at work. And then the war was won, and Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, and Johnny and Rosie, they haven't seen each other in a long time, so they get real happy. Like real happy. Like Marvin Gaye happy, right? So, see, he sang a song called never mind. You know what? If they don't get it next year, just let it go. Just let it go. We'll get it back to you as well, too. And so they get real happy, and they have all these kids, boom, and all of a sudden a generation that grows up, and they learn early on, because this box inside their living room that has an image on there that shows what happens when things not right, and a generation that learns, if you don't like what you see, well, you fight and you organize and you mobilize. And if someone holds you back because of the color of your skin, well, we march in Selma. And if someone holds you back because of your gender to be able to vote, well, we're going to burn our bras. But a gender and a race, and more importantly, a generation of fighters that said, go work hard. Roll up our sleeves and you go. And they had less kids than any generation before then. And after them. Gave work to this generation called Generation X. How many of you remember the O.J. chase? Just let me, I'm curious. All right, very good. I was a young man trying to be able to date in Los Angeles using my father's car. It was a white Ford Bronco. Not a really good one to be able to use. But Gen X, as mom and dad went to work and they were not home, Gen X spent a lot of time on their own, and they learned early on some key values that they brought into work in a different kind of way because their parents were working and maybe their parents weren't together anymore. And all of a sudden, a Gen X decided, well, they would get home from school, they would take off their backpack, they'd pull their Trapper Keeper out, they'd pull their Trapper Keeper down, their Swatch comes off, the IZOD jacket or the Penn Members Only jacket comes off, one jelly comes off, two jelly comes off, the Jordache jeans come off, and the Guess jeans go on, put a Hot Pocket in and watch some MTV, you spend a lot of time by yourselves. And they were known as latchkey. And they learned early on, you take care of yourself, but you always have a backup what? And we approach work in a different kind of way. We're here, but we're careful because the job may go. Reductions in force, trickle-down economy, and all of a sudden the first time that the room said, be careful when we get ready for work because you may not have a job, especially as good as your mom and dad. And they went to work, and they gave birth to a generation. And the boomers said, hey, we want to be part of these kids' lives. And they said, great, you're babysitters. And they gave birth to a millennial generation, the class of 00. You remember Y2K? Remember what's supposed to happen on Y2K? And what did not happen on Y2K? And this generation came up in a time when the world is changing around them. And there was a sound that, well, it was like this idea of American on what? Line. And the generation that learned early on, you can be anything you. And they totally believed it. Until 2 towers brought their hopes down. Every generation has had watershed moments. We're in watershed moments right now as we look to a next generation, 15 years or older. They're called the digital natives. They're Generation Z. And in 30 years from now, Beyonce will be 67 years old. Just to put things in perspective here as well. So we approach our work with a different kind of a style. Each generation has a different kind of a style. But in order to be able to do this, especially as we move forward, we think about the speed, and the speed of not only the information that's being shared, but even the speed of the work that we provide. When it's estimated by the year 2020 that over 40% of the workforce will be doing gig-based economy. Gig-based jobs. In other words, I'm not here for the long haul, I'm here for just a little bit of time. For it's also seen the the National Department of Labor did a study in 2016 and was trying to look at how many jobs will you take in your lifetime. And boomers, you'll take 4 to 7 different career changes in your lifetime. Extras, you learn you never can put all your eggs in one basket, so you're always trying to be able to build your skills. You take 7 to 11 different career changes in your lifetime. A millennial generation that learned, I may not be here that long. YOLO, you only live once. And if they follow the same trajectory that they are, our millennial generation will take somewhere between 17 and 22 career changes in their lifetime. We're not here for the long haul. But while I'm here, I'm looking for what can I get from you right away, and that speed. How many of us have ever gone online and you tried to be able to go to a website and you got that spinning pinwheel of death? You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. How long will you wait? Someone tell me. 5 seconds? Let's try it. All right. 1001. 1002. 1003. How many of you are getting antsy right now as well? You're like, oh, I don't know. Click, move on, click, move on, click, move on. And so the work that we do has to have almost a click, move on. You're going to be able to get the information. And now it's about how we access it. Click, move on, those skills, those techniques. And for a digital native generation, our next 30 years comes back to how I make sure that you have soft skills, hard skills, but also swagger skills. You know what swagger is, right? Swagger is when confidence and passion and a sense of purpose come in. And so I like how you mentioned Jethro as well. You know who else had great swagger? He was a business owner. He had a partner named Wheezy. I'm talking about George Jefferson. Because he was moving on up to the east side. You know what I'm talking about, right? And fish don't fry in the kitchen and beans don't burn on the grill. It took a whole lot of trying just to get up that hill. But now they're up in the big league, getting their turn at bat. As long as we live, it's you and me, baby. There ain't anything wrong with that. We're moving on up, right? Moving on up, right? Rick James had swagger. Mick Jagger has swagger. Justin Timberlake has swagger. Swagger is when we provide passion, skills, confidence, and a sense of being. And sometimes we have to put it all together. That's what this is about. This is about we bringing in not only our infrastructures that we have, the partnerships that we must have, a professionalism that says this is more than just a job, but looking at it from and thinking about this intentionally. And sometimes you've got to have some amazing people around you as well. That's what this is all about. I'm going to ask if you would, in my last 1 minute at a time, would you please right now, my friends, stand up, please. Come on, stand up, stand up. You've been an amazing, amazing audience. Stand up, please, And you're going to need to be able to find a partner, find a rock star partner, groups of 2. I need some music partner, please. Rock star partner, groups of 2. Find a partner, find a partner, find a partner, find a partner, find a partner.
That's what people say.
All right.
That's what people say.
Now would you please give your partner a high five? Give him a high five. Would you please give them a professional handshake, please? Professional handshake. Would you please give them the no pulse dead fish handshake? Yeah, that's just awkward already as it is. I got this as well. Some of you didn't even lift your arm. You're like, But last but not least, because we've got to bring a different kind of sense of style, speed, and swagger to this, would you please right now face your partner and let's go some kind of a new handshake with style. Let's go handshake with style, handshake with style. I like it. I like it. Do not do that on a job interview. We want to be able to make sure we know this, right? Hey, what's up? What's up? Come on, my hand. All right, let's go. Style, speed, and swagger. This is a competition of style and speed, and who's got swagger? Tell your partner right now. Say, you've got style. Tell them, well, you've got speed. Tell them, but I've got more. All right, we're going to find out if you do. Put your right hand up like this, right hand up like this. Count your fingers out loud, 1 through 5. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With your partners, go 1 through 5. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very good. Now let's go. Count yours again, 1 through 5. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With your partner, start with the number 6. Go. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now here's what's going to happen. Sometimes when we put all this together, when we come to a conference like this, we're trying to build skills. It's about style, speed, and swagger. And I want to be able to honor that we are going the next 30 years requires you and I to be on our game. Am I right? Say true. We need to be ahead of our game with some style, speed, and swagger. And this, as I finish up, is going to be our competition with each other. Now, I'm going to have us do just very simple. You're going to face the partner right now, please. And I'm going to ask my friend, my good friend, and this is Mr. Fred Baker. Would you please welcome Mr. Fred Baker to the stage here? Mr. Fred Baker here. Fred, you're going to show this. I'm 30 seconds away from finishing up here, but Mr. Fred Baker is one of our trainers with Leading to Change. I'm very, very honored to share space with him. Mr. Fred Baker, you're going to be able to put this hand like this. You're going to put it behind you, and your job is to secretly choose 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 fingers. Your partner will also choose 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 fingers. It's a competition of style, speed, and swagger. And what's going to happen is this space right between the two of you, this is your playing field. This is the competition field. This is where it all goes down. Tell your partner this is where it all goes down. All right. Now what's going to happen is this. When I say 1, 2, 3, go, you'll have chose 1 through 5. He'll have chose 1 through 5. When I say 1, 2, 3, go, you're going to bring your hand around and you're going to show on the playing field, style and speed, your fingers. Your partner needs to show your fingers. And your job is to look at your fingers, look at your partner, your fingers. And this job, you've got to call it as it is. In this job, you look at your fingers, your partner's fingers, add them up, say the total out loud before your partner does. It's very simple. You said you have more style and speed. I want to see if you can improve it. Now, here's one last thing. You can only choose 1 through 5. No such thing as a 0. But let's say honor, say dignity, and respect. We bring honor to the different generations that have been here before us. We bring dignity to this work because that is somebody's son, that is somebody's daughter, that is somebody's mama, that's somebody's papa that you and I get a chance to be able to work with every single day. And we bring respect to this partner in front of us. And that means, Mr. Fred Baker, if you happen to choose only 1 finger today, you know which finger not to be able to fly as well, too. Right. Just make sure. If you're laughing, you know who I'm talking to right now. So, all right. Now, the last thing is, as I finish, we're going to show you, well, slow motion. Get ready. 1, 2, 3, 2. No! Round of applause for Fred. Round of applause for Fred. Face your partner right now. Put one hand up like this. This is who we are when we come to this conference, but there's been too much energy, too much money, and too much of your time and resources to leave the same person. This is who you are. But I want you to raise your game by the time you leave here tomorrow. Say, raise your game. Put your other hand up like this, please. Other hand up. Let's go. Catch your fingers out loud. 1 through 10. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. With your partners, go 11. Go. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. This is it. We're raising our game. Say, raise your game. Style, speed, and swagger, both hands behind. Same rules apply. Minimum 1, maximum 5 on each hand. This is going to be for everything because this is it. Would you please, competitive stance. Tell your partner, say, I got this. Say, no, you don't. Say, oh, yeah? Well, bring it. Let's go. Get ready. And 1, 2, 3. Style, speed, swagger. Style, speed, swagger. Give him a high 10, high 10, high 10, high 10, high 10.
Thank you all very much. Let's give another great round of applause for our 5 fantastic speakers today. Thank you all for being with us and sharing your different perspective. And Eric, thank you so much for getting us excited, helping us remember our style, our speed, and our swagger. And I hope everyone has a great day. We'll see you tonight at 6:30.